I first noticed Ethan the way you noticed a small flame in a windy room, stubborn and quiet, refusing to go out. He kept to the edges of things, the halls, the cafeteria, even the soccer field where he ran with careful steps, like he did not want to take up too much space on the earth. Most days he carried the weight of silence like a backpack that never came off. In class he answered when asked, nevermore, folding his words into the smallest shapes so they would not draw attention. Yet there was a steadiness to him, a quiet metronome you only hear if you lean in and listen. Ethan came from the blue house near the end of the street, the one with the peeling porch paint and the brave geraniums that kept blooming no matter how the season frowned. His mother worked late at the diner, and on her days off she swept the steps as if she could tidy luck into returning. He helped her with that, shoulders angled forward, eyes studying the broom lines like they were a map out of something he could not name. At school, invisibility wrapped around Ethan like a thin winter coat that cannot keep out the wind. When a teacher asked for volunteers, hands shot up around him and he stayed in his lap. When a joke passed through a crowd, it skipped him like a flat stone on a still lake. I saw it, not as a teacher or a parent, just as someone who pays attention to the small tremors that say more than the loud noises ever do. He was not unhappy exactly, but he had the look of someone walking along a fence, careful not to snag on either side. What set him apart, if you watched long enough, was his stillness when something unfair happened. If a classmate got blamed for a mess he did not make, Ethan's head would tilt, and the air around him would thicken as if a storm wanted in. If someone cut a line, his hands would tense on the straps of that tired backpack. He rarely spoke, but in those moments, his silence felt like a question that would not retire. It was clear he kept a set of scales inside, weighing everything, keeping a record no one else could see. There is a kind of courage that does not roar. It gathers like rain in a barrel, drop by patient drop. That is how Ethan's courage lived in him, quiet, accumulating, waiting for a day nobody could predict. The day came when silence no longer felt like shelter for Ethan. It began in the school courtyard, where laughter often rose like a careless wind. This time the sound bent sharp, carrying with it the kind of cruelty that leaves bruises you cannot see. A group of older boys had cornered Daniel, Ethan's closest friend, a boy who shared his quiet corners and his long walks home. They pushed his books into the dirt, jeered at the way his glasses slipped down his nose, called him names too heavy for their age. Ethan stood at the edge, hands locked around the straps of his backpack. His heart hammered as if it wanted to leap free, to do the speaking his mouth could not. He had seen bullying before, always from a distance, but now it was Daniel, the boy who once split his sandwich with him when Ethan had forgotten his lunch. The injustice tasted bitter, dry, filling his throat until it was hard to breathe. He wanted to look away, but something inside him refused to let his eyes close. Fear whispered its familiar arguments. You are only one, they are many. Stay still and nothing will happen to you. But another voice, quiet yet persistent, rose against it. If you stay still, then what happens to Daniel? That question struck him deeper than any threat. He remembered Mr. Harris, the retired teacher who often sat on his porch in the evenings, inviting Ethan into gentle conversations. The old man once told him that real courage is not about the noise you make, but about the line you refuse to cross. Courage, he said, is often lonely at first. Those words returned to him now, like lanterns lit in the dark. With trembling steps, Ethan moved forward. Each stride felt like walking into a storm, his body begging him to turn back. When he reached Daniel, he bent to pick up one of the fallen books, brushing the dirt off its cover. Then, standing taller than he thought he could, Ethan looked at the bullies and said, "Stop." His voice cracked, but it was steady enough to hang in the air like a held breath. The laughter faltered for a moment. The courtyard stilled, eyes shifting, waiting for the storm to break. The bullies sneered, mocking his courage, but they did not expect him to stand there, unflinching, a single figure refusing to retreat. That day, Ethan's silence ended, and with it began a trial he could not escape. What followed was not triumph, at least not in the way stories often tell it. The bullies laughed harder, their words cutting sharper now that Ethan stood in their way. One shoved him, another mocked his trembling hands. Yet Ethan did not step back. His knees wavered, his stomach twisted, but his feet stayed rooted to the ground, as though the earth itself held him there. Daniel, still shaken, looked up at him with eyes wide, caught between fear and relief. When the crowd dispersed, Whispers followed Ethan through the halls. Some called him foolish, others muttered that he was asking for trouble. But beneath the noise there was something else, small but growing, a hush of respect. Not everyone dared to say it aloud, yet students who once passed him by began meeting his eyes, as if his defiance had lit a small spark in places long dark. That evening, Ethan found himself on Mr. Harris's porch, the weight of the day pressing on him like a stone. He confessed that he had been scared, that his voice had nearly broken, that part of him still wished he had stayed silent. Mr. Harris listened, then said gently, "Fear never disappears, Ethan. It walks beside you. Courage is simply deciding where you will walk in spite of it." Those words settled into Ethan like seeds, and though he did not fully understand them, he felt their truth. He had not won the fight, but he had not lost himself either. He realized that courage is not measured in cheers or in victories, but in the refusal to look away when injustice stands before you. In the days that followed, Ethan noticed subtle shifts. A younger student sat beside him at lunch, quietly sliding half an apple toward his tray. Daniel walked closer on their way home, shoulders no longer hunched in defeat. Even the bullies seemed to falter, their cruelty not gone but weakened, as though his resistance had carved a crack in their armor. Ethan did not become the most popular boy, nor did the world suddenly grow kinder. Yet within him, something permanent had changed. He discovered that even standing alone, he was not powerless. His voice, once hidden, had become an anchor, not loud, not celebrated, but strong enough to steady another. And in that quiet strength, he found a truth he would carry all his life. One act of courage, however small, can echo far beyond its moment. Sometimes the world feels too heavy for one pair of shoulders, too vast for one voice to matter. Yet Ethan's story reminds us that change often begins in silence, in the trembling courage of someone who chooses not to look away. To stand up for what is right is to declare that kindness still has a place, even when it feels outnumbered. Let this story be a mirror, asking where in your life you might need to be brave. If it touched your heart, consider sharing it, leaving your thoughts below, and joining us for more stories of true spirit.